Welcome to today's webinar on awards writing for graduate students, hosted by the Faculty of Graduate Studies and the Right Site. My name is Cara Violini, and I am a writing coach with the Right Site. Let's begin. Why are securing academic awards important? They add prestige, they highlight your research abilities, they indicate your interest in contributing to academic literature and research. They emphasize your commitment to scholarly activities. They raise your profile and that of your program. They cement your status as an emerging scholar, and they can provide financial relief. While there are so many benefits to pursuing awards, many go unfunded. Why is that? Perhaps one reason could be imposter syndrome. This is an experience some students feel about themselves, that there are smarter, stronger applicants out there, so they don't bother applying. Imposter syndrome is a cycle of anxiety where the student begins a new task feeling excited, then develops increasing anxiety with workload, tasks, and deadlines. This anxiety turns into procrastination and feelings of discouragement, self-doubt, and feeling negative about the task. This can balloon into more complex negative feelings of being not good enough, inferior to other students, an undesirable candidate, a weak writer, or an inexperienced researcher. And then too often the task doesn't get completed or doesn't get completed with confidence. Yes, awards can be competitive, but why not you? Have confidence in your abilities, consider what you have overcome. What makes you stand out from the crowd of applicants? How can your research goals make a difference? The worst thing that can happen is the funding will be awarded to someone else, so why not go for it? You may be exactly what they are looking for. Adopt a positive attitude and be confident in your academic worth. Your ideas are unique and valuable. You have something important to say. You may be the ideal candidate for the award. Stay positive and optimistic. Where do you start looking for awards? How do you go about locating and choosing an award suitable for your needs? First, use Athabasca's Award Finder. Read through the descriptions and make note of the awards that resonate with you, your academic discipline, and where you are on your academic journey. You can always contact the Faculty of Graduate Studies or even your own faculty or supervisor for advice. You can also check out the awards and bursaries available through Athabasca University's Graduate Students Association, or AGSA. As you go through the list of awards, make note that there are different kinds. Generally, bursaries are for financial need. Scholarships are based on academic achievement in your program. Awards are prizes that may have very specific eligibility criteria and are often donated. Nominated awards means that someone suggests you as a candidate. Grants are funds that can be quite substantive and prestigious and also complex to apply for. Some awards are external to the university. This means that they are organized by an outside agency. An example of this would be the Tri-Agency Awards or the Canada Graduate Scholarships. SSHRC, the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council, could be an option if you are a MAIS or GCAP student. NSERC stands for Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council, and CIHR, or the Canadian Institute of Health Research, could be an option if you're in the health disciplines. These are government-funded programs for graduate students at the master's and doctoral levels. They are also quite sizable. It's important to take the time to read through all the instructions and eligibility criteria. Reaching out to your supervisor, or FGS, will help support you through the process. Other external awards may come from provincial governments, non-government agencies, or from private donors. As well, does your profession have unions, associations, or organizations? That could also be a place to start. If you're interested in an external competition, inquire to Faculty of Graduate Studies or the funder if there is an information session. Go to the awards website to see if there are videos, tutorials, guides, or handbooks. For the Canada Graduate Scholarships, note that AU has an internal deadline, that your application will be reviewed by an internal committee, and if selected, AU forwards the application to the national competition. Then there are internal awards. These are funded by the university for Athabasca University students. An example is the Graduate Student Research Fund, which can help offset costs incurred by conducting research. These awards are designed to support the success of Athabasca University students. And there are a number of external and internal awards available for students who are part of equity-deserving groups, such as women, students of color, English language learners, Indigenous students, international students, students with disabilities, students with financial need, students who identify as 2S LGBTQIA+, or single parents, students with children, student caregivers. If you identify as one or more of these groups, you may be eligible. These awards often ask for a biographical statement for you to share relevant information about your life, and the Right site can help you with a writing task like this. As you look through the list of awards, create a spreadsheet to keep track of all the details. Some awards may provide funds at different points in the year, so having a record will make the process more streamlined. We will be giving you an Excel template for you to build your own record, and it has the following categories: the name of the award, deadline, eligibility criteria, letters of reference, supplemental materials, communication with the funder, relevant links, results, and feedback. Make sure to research the potential award to make sure that it aligns with your area of focus. So check out their website, research past winners, go through the information very slowly, and take notes, screenshots. Contact Faculty of Graduate Studies or the funder for more information. You may also find YouTube videos from legitimate sources that help you understand the application process. To start applying, let's use the award writing process cycle to guide you through the steps. These steps include understanding the award and funding instructions, planning and pre-writing the application, clarifying your research, outlining the different writing tasks, write the writing task, then revise, edit, and proofread. And this cycle doesn't end with proofreading. It ends back at the beginning. Cross-check your application against the original instructions to double-check that you've met the criteria. You can use this process for any award, scholarship, grant, or bursary, and you can also use this process for any number of writing tasks. Let's start with the first step, understanding award funding instructions. First, review the award details and add anything new to your record sheet. Make note of deadlines, fees, referees, transcripts, the writing tasks, and any writing tasks that are unfamiliar to you. The Right site can help you learn about these different forms. And then, of course, ask questions to Faculty of Graduate Studies or the funder. Don't be shy. Award committees can easily identify an award application tossed together at the last minute. Rushed applications are obvious. So start looking before the award season. This is the main season, August to December, but there are awards year-round. So plan ahead, enlist readers and reviewers, contact your referees early, be clear about your research focus, and make sure to order those transcripts. If you create a timeline or a schedule, it'll help you make sure everything gets done on time. Use a calendar and first start with the deadline and work your way backwards. Keep the following in mind. Referees should have about a month to compose their letter. If your university still issues transcripts by print, give them 2 weeks. Factor in editing and proofreading time, and also if you're working with a mentor, factor in that turnaround time as well and enter all of these dates into a calendar. Pay attention to specific presentation criteria and instructions. You don't want your application rejected for an oversight. For instance, transcripts. Do they have to be official, unofficial? How many copies? Print, PDF? Referees, how many? Do they write their own letter or do they fill in an online form? With writing tasks, do you create Word documents or do you enter online fields? What's a documentation style? What about font, spacing, headers, page numbers? And does your award have restrictions where you can only hold one award at a time? These are good details to figure out. Let's move on to the next step, planning and pre-writing. Once you have a schedule in place and you're clear on the award's expectations, it's time to brainstorm. Brainstorming can help you generate ideas, zero in on your research focus, and reflect on what you want to say as a scholar. To get started, first think about what donors are looking for in the application. A forward thinker, an innovator, a community leader, a role model. Read the awards information very carefully to look for clues as to their ideal candidate. Now start brainstorming what makes your perspective unique. What makes you you? Reflect on your vision, goals, and values. What's at the heart of your research? Acknowledge your accomplishments, challenges that you've overcome. What makes you a well-rounded candidate? Why this award? How does it support your goals? The brainstorming continues. Now we need to start thinking about the key components of research. Make sure to identify your area of focus, your research questions, your methodology, theoretical framework. What about key terminology and buzzwords? Maybe you have a concept diagram, and maybe you've done a literature review. Remember to state these plainly so a person in another discipline can understand. Take this brainstorming and practice ways to describe your research. Try summarizing your research into a thesis statement, so a single sentence, a blurb of a couple of sentences, and an abstract. I won't read all of this out to you. I'm just giving this to you as an example so you can understand the visual ratio of size. So at the top is the single sentence thesis statement, and then a couple of more sentences just to create some more context into a blurb, and then a more traditional abstract. Each of these conveys your research scope differently, and you'll be able to use them in different ways. For example, in the application process, you'll be doing some communication tasks, and you might be able to use the thesis, blurb, or abstract in these communications. For instance, emails to your referees, to your supervisor, maybe you're working with a writing coach, emails to possible readers, editors, or proofreaders, communication with the funder, communication with university faculty and staff. You might be able to attach one of those versions of your research to those communications. And always remember to keep your communications scholarly and professional. A good referee can speak about your academic and professional work, write in a credible and detailed manner, is an instructor, mentor, coordinator, supervisor, is familiar with the subject of scholarships, and is not a family or friend. When you have chosen your referee, send them your CV, a link to the award and its instructions, previous academic work if it's been a while, maybe a letter describing your purpose with this award, your thesis statement, blurb, or abstract, and acknowledge your relationship to the referee, show gratitude, and always give them some time to put it together. Developing and clarifying your ideas. All the brainstorming planning work you have done will help this part of the writing process. Here you will further develop your ideas with more detail. Begin with the clear research question. Develop the methodology. Create clear connections to the theoretical foundation. Consider ethical viewpoints. Do a literature review. Indicate what you are hoping to explore. Itemize limitations in your research and gaps in the literature. Consider how your research contributes to literature. Is it relevant, current, and timely? And if you have to, you might have to go back and update that thesis, blurb, or abstract if you need to update some of the language or terminology. Just remember that each writing task has a core message. For instance, a statement of intent: what is the purpose of your research? A CV: what do your activities say about you? A research proposal: why do you need funding? How is your research current, relevant, and impactful? Read widely on your topic so that it's clear how your research will contribute to the literature and possibly fill a knowledge gap. Make sure that you've read current research in your area of focus, that you know key scholars, and that you're familiar with discipline-related vocabulary and concepts. Make sure that you also know the gaps in the literature. You may want to ask mentors to read what you have so far to make sure it's on track. However, what's more important is having a general reader look at it. Your research needs to be described in a way that someone without any knowledge will be able to follow what you're saying. The right site is a great place for this, as we are great general readers. I highly recommend creating an outline for every writing task. Even if it's rough, with just a couple of jotted down highlights, you'll have a guide for how to proceed. When creating outlines, remember that there are formats for all writing tasks. This is a sample list of common writing tasks you could find in an application. For instance, a CV, statement of intent, biography, cover letter, abstract, an essay, executive summary, description of research, research proposal, rationale, answers to specific questions. Look at the formats for these. Of course, look at the instructions in your award first, as they may have preferences, and use that format as a guideline in your outline. It'll help organize your thoughts. For instance, the research proposal has a number of sections, and you can use those sections as subheadings in your outline. And remember to save all of your drafts, as you may repurpose them for different awards. Let's look at some of these tasks. Your CV, or curriculum vitae. It is an academically oriented list of accomplishments. In it, you will include education, work experience, your research and teaching experience, awards, grants that you have won, relevant skills, community service. Maybe you've published an article you can put in there, conferences you've attended, and maybe your referees. What we want to avoid are unrelated activities. When I say unfinished programs, I'm meaning programs like maybe you took a program 20 years ago and dropped out. You don't need to list that there. But if you are in the middle of a graduate program, then keep that and just indicate on the CV that it's in progress. Using the internet, sending emails, and using Microsoft Word are now assumed technological fluency, which means there's an expectation that you know how to do that. So you don't need to add those in. If you know more sophisticated software, then you can add that under relevant skills in the CV. Try and avoid rationales, purposes, objectives, this kind of heavy prose that creates big blocks of text. The point of a CV is for the reader to be able to quickly locate information. And do avoid creativity, unfortunately. So don't color the background of the page or have colored font, images, distracting formatting, or even excess personal information or photos. Keep it very simple and standardized. For the statement of intent, you want to write using common knowledge in layman's terms so that it's understandable to the general reader. You want to write concisely, demonstrate a clear vision of your research, and show that a well thought out intent. What you want to avoid is that academic jargon, wordiness, discipline-specific terminology, or overly long sentences, or just writing to impress. And writing to impress means that you're writing in a way that there's a lot of complicated vocabulary so that it kind of sounds sophisticated. But what happens there is that you could lose the reader, or even worse, confuse the reader. Clarity is always more important. For a biography, what you want to do is make sure that you are thinking about your personal, professional, service experiences that are relevant to the award. So focus on successes and achievements, and when you have what you may perceive as a failure in your life, you want to turn that into a win. What did you learn from it? What you want to avoid in the biographical statement is oversharing and not relevant information. Again, the wordiness. You don't want to look at failures through the lens of shame or apologize for mistakes. What you want to do is show that you have overcome challenges and that you're resilient. Also, aim to write an active voice. A cover letter. For a cover letter, think about audience. So you're writing to a person. You're not going to assume their gender. Try and keep it to one page. Remember that a cover letter should complement but not replace the CV, so don't repeat information from the CV in the letter. You want to write persuasively. Again, keeping those sentences manageable. And then, of course, thank them at the end of the letter. If you have to do a research proposal, make sure that you have a clear title. You want to show that your research is feasible and will contribute to the field. You can also use headers for different sections, such as introduction, background, all the way down, implications, conclusion. But note that in your award, there might be different names for these sections, like objectives or significance of research. So always go by what the award instructions say. But if you do have to talk about costs and goals, you can use the SMART acronym, where S stands for specific, making your goals clear and specific. M is measurable, defining measurable assets. A is attainable, to confirm that your goals are attainable. R is relevant. And T is time-based. So when you think about costs and you run it through the SMART acronym, it'll help you think about it from a variety of perspectives. Have you thought about perhaps childcare, supplies? Is it a feasible cost? Is it time constrained? Use this method to really critically think about these aspects to your proposal. You may also find that you need to add supplementary writing tasks. Sometimes we cannot meet an application's requests exactly, and we need to explain some context to the person reviewing the application. Sometimes this is called a special circumstances page. Here, you may need to explain why there was a disruption in your studies. Maybe you took a leave or a hiatus. Maybe there was a personal crisis, or you experienced an impact from COVID-19 like many of us did. Maybe there's criteria that you can't meet and you need to explain why. Perhaps you've had a change in supervisor, or you've relocated, or a change in your program. Perhaps you're one of those students who went from a bachelor to a PhD without a master's. Or perhaps you didn't do a bachelor's and went straight to a master's. Maybe there's an issue with one of your referees. All of these kind of administrative details, issues need to be explained so that the reviewer can understand your situation. Another kind of supplementary writing task could be references, appendices, tables, figures, charts, visual material. Just make sure that you use the required documentation style. You can work with us on formatting, and if you did not design it, let's say a figure, make sure that you're citing the original source. Time to write. Writing is a form of communication between a writer and a reader. There are different readers for different tasks. Most importantly, though, is to assume the reader is not in your academic discipline. Think of someone in your life who is friendly, but not in your profession. How would you describe your research to them? So when you're writing, assume that general reader, use plain language by avoiding jargon, clarity and concision, use shorter sentences, and remember, we want to focus on the reader understanding what we're saying, not that we're trying to impress them. When we're writing, we also need to be cognizant of tone. For instance, each writing task will have a different tone. A biography is written in first person and is a little bit more intimate, whereas an abstract is very academic. A statement of intent can be persuasive, and a proposal will demonstrate critical thinking. Adjust the tone to the writing task. And also, you want to know your voice. You have a unique writer's voice, so don't try and write like someone else. Be authentic in your vocabulary and style, and be confident and believe in your research vision. Write from experience and write confidently. How do you get started? It's overwhelming to think about all of the writing tasks you need to do. First of all, follow those outlines as guides. That's a key step. Take one task at a time. Save all of your drafts and versions. Use track changes in the document to leave comments or questions for yourself. So if you're in the middle of writing, let's say a statement of intent, and as you're writing, you think, I need to double check this information. Add a track changes comment and then just keep writing. It'll help you stay on task. And then when you come back to the statement of intent later to edit it, you can deal with those comments or things that you flagged in the margin of the document. Make sure to take breaks. A tired mind creates a lot of messy writing with mistakes. So pay attention to your physical signals. If you're yawning or feeling restless, maybe it's time for some water or a nap, or maybe you need a full 24 hours before you can come back and write with precision. What to avoid when we're writing? We want to avoid conversational and formal speech. Even a biography, though personal, needs to reflect a professional tone. So don't use text acronyms, emojis, slang, colloquialisms. Avoid vocabulary that makes you sound insecure. You want to come across confidently. Perhaps, maybe, I hope to, possibly, I don't know, can make you sound like you're unsure about your research focus. And then they will feel unsure about wanting to give funding to that. Minimize the sob stories. Focus on rising above your challenges. Wordiness. You're probably seeing a trend here with our emphasis on clarity. Generalized vocabulary, words like things, stuff, many, means that it could mean anything to the reader, so replace words like that with more specific language. Adjectives describe nouns and adverbs describe verbs, and these words have a tendency to sound dramatic or even immature, and they also add extra words. Do we really need to say, I ran quickly, or is it just I ran? Because running is already quick. So maybe go through your document and look specifically for adjectives and adverbs like amazing, brilliant, quickly, totally, and see how the sentence changes if you remove them. Also, you want to avoid overusing transitions. Transitional words are like henceforth, additionally, moreover, conversely. When they're overused, they can create a very abrupt, almost mechanical flow to writing, and it doesn't really read naturally. That's not to say you can't use them, because they can be very effective, but just use them sparingly. If you have to fill in fields on an online form instead of attaching Word documents, always write the original text in a Word document. Save it frequently, spell check it, and then cut and paste it into the text box. Why? Text boxes can time out and you can lose your work. As well, by keeping it in a Word document, you're also keeping a record of what you've written, and you might be able to repurpose that for another awards application. Now that the writing is done, now it's time to really clean it up and get it into its final draft condition to submit. And to do this, we take 3 steps: revising, editing, and proofreading. Now, sometimes people can use these terms interchangeably, but the way that they're different in terms of this writing process is that revising is the big picture changes. Editing is a little bit more nitpicky, where we're looking at language and sentence structure. And then proofreading is that really fine detail corrections. So for revision, go back to the award instructions just to double check things like word count, font size, documentation, to make sure that that presentation is in shape. Read your work out loud. If you do not have a hearing impairment, your ear can pick up on phrases that sound a bit bumpy and could use some smoothing out. As well, when we read, we have a tendency to scan and go fast. When you're speaking out loud, you slow down and you read everything that you're seeing, and this will help you locate errors. What you want to do with revision is when you're reading through the paper, read through with one focus at a time instead of trying to fix everything all at once. So read in dedicated rounds for clarity, for flow, for synthesis, form, tone, before you move on to the editing stage. Here, when you're editing, you want to be mindful of grammatical habits, and we all have them. But let's say there's a tendency to overuse dashes or semicolons. We want to reduce that so it doesn't become distracting to the reader. Be cognizant of frequent errors, and perhaps that could be things like a misplaced comma or perhaps a spelling error. If you use Editor in Word, it'll help identify some of these errors. And if you see the same error coming up again and again and again, then do a really dedicated, close read with that error in mind to make sure that you've caught them all. And if you don't understand the error, please come to the right site so we can help you out with that. Again, look out for that jargon and replace it with simple vocabulary. Keep your verb tense consistent. For example, in a biographical statement, you may start out talking about yourself in the past, you may transition to talking to yourself in the present, and you may talk about yourself in the future. You just want to make sure that the verb tense matches the writing purpose. One strategy you can do is to actually print out the application and edit the hard copy. Just like I was saying about when we're reading, we tend to scan. Well, when we're reading on a screen, we also tend to scroll fast, which means we can miss things. But when it's sitting there in print, it's hard to do that. So you'll catch different mistakes. You'll also catch more errors with fresh eyes. So take those breaks, leave it for a day. Make sure to factor this time, these days where you don't look at it, into your schedule. Because when you walk away from something for 24 hours and come back, a whole bunch of errors are going to be obvious to you because you're not so close to it and you've had a break. And it's a great way to really polish your paper. At this point, share your drafts with a general reader. And when you get feedback, don't be overwhelmed by it. Just work on one piece of advice at a time. And the feedback may not all be relevant, so just take, what's helpful to you and discard the rest. But just make sure to go through the pieces of advice one at a time so you don't feel too overwhelmed. For proofreading, check for things like stray punctuation, extra spaces. These tiny details count because it makes your application more professional looking and you're not creating distractions to the reader. Editor in Word can scan for those grammatical and spelling errors that we may be unaware of. A proofreader can go through and find spots that need corrections. And we also have a revising, editing, and proofreading checklist that you can use to go over and double check your paper. Just like with editing, you also want to proofread with fresh eyes because it is such a detail-oriented job that you want to be rested for it. So now that we've completed the cycle, we have to go back to the beginning and read over the award instructions one last time. We want to go slowly and make sure that we didn't miss something, because when we first read instructions, it can be really overwhelming, especially if there's a lot of different things we have to do. So now that you've done everything, you can say, oh, yeah, done this, done this, done this. Oh, I didn't do that. And you can go back and add it. You really don't want, after all the time and energy you've invested so far into creating this application, you don't want it to be rejected over a technicality or a misunderstood instruction. So the results are in. You've been rejected. This happens. And take that time to feel disappointed. Now, sometimes if your application's been rejected, you'll receive feedback from a reviewer. So make sure to read that feedback when you're ready. You don't have to read it that day. But keep note of that feedback because it can really help with future applications. And just make sure to save that. Yeah, it's a little bit awkward to have to thank our referees and tell them it didn't work out, but just be professional about it. Kind of treat it like you're closing a case, you're closing a job, and ask if you can call on them again. But maybe you got it. Hooray! If this is the case, contact the funder and the referees to thank them, update your CV, and you may have a schedule that you need to where you need to update the funder. And if that's the case, make sure to add those dates to your calendar. You can apply the awards writing process to any award application. So just remember to give yourself lots of time, and you don't have to do it alone. Use the right site and other supports.